Yo, so I've just arrived in Belgrade. I haven't actually booked anywhere to stay yet, so I feel like a bit of an alien in this country. So maybe this guy has some ideas. Best plan is to try and find some Wi-Fi and then try and find some accommodation, and then I can dump my bags, which are always nice when it's 37 degrees. Yo, so I had a coffee, I had a beer, and in the time I had a coffee and a beer, I found a place to stay on Airbnb. A little bit more than a hostel, but it looks nice. I mean, to be honest, it's probably big enough for 4 people, but the price difference was almost nothing. So hopefully I can find the lady. It's apparently just around here somewhere, which is not a bad little area actually. Seems right in the center. Not far from the Nicholas Tesla Museum, so that should be useful. Alright, that's quite strange. So this supermarket is called Idea London. As you can see, I just showed you a little bit of what was inside. I bought a water. What's interesting, when I was here last, I was here probably I think 12 years ago, and the reaction I got from a lot of taxi drivers, at least, and some locals, was they didn't like Americans and they didn't like the English, but they liked everyone else. The reason they didn't like the English and the Americans is because we basically bombed the shit out of them. Tony Blair and George Bush dropped bomb after bomb after bomb onto Serbia, and especially Belgrade. Rightly or wrongly, you might say. I personally think it was wrong. There was atrocities on both sides. Unfortunately, this is what happens when you mix religion into the equation. Just being cut off there. So this is what happens when you mix religion into the equation. But it's nice to see that people are now shopping in a supermarket that's called London. So that could tell me that they don't hate us as much as they used to. I hope they don't.
Neka voliš mi kolegu, voliš mi kolegu. Together. And we're actually staring.
Osim ako ti ne želiš.
Pa ve mamen stigli samo 10 stvari.
Boško.
Je 150. Da će mi pet malo da uopšte neku bilna. Ove me moram ja sad.
It's strange. I was last here 12 years ago, like I said previously, but it was a bachelor party. Anton got married that year, and actually he might be able to correct me, it may have been longer than 12 years. But when I was here with him and Henrik, this place was dead. There was no one around. The place where you could see the tanks and sort of artillery guns and everything, nobody was here. So now it's nice to see there's lots of people here. So clearly the economy has picked up, and you know, things have definitely changed. But it's very different from how it used to be. So right behind me over here, there's a lot of bars along the riverfront, stretching all the way from here, around here, and to back around the river over here. Also some over here. So the plan is to basically try and see as many as possible, take it in. It's a beautiful night, it's a beautiful evening for it, so let's see what happens. This is nice. This is very different to how I remember it. There was nobody here last time. This is surprising, but at the same time it's good. Am I right in thinking this, Anton, is the hotel we stayed in the last time? Just over here. I think that's the hotel. I could be wrong. Fortress. I'm sat in the fortress right now. You've just seen all the images of fortress grounds. There's a couple of museums in the fortress. World War II museum. There's also a military museum, arms museum. Unfortunately closed at the moment. It might be being closed for renovations, so I may have come at a bad time. But I did see it last time I was here, so I don't feel so bad. Yeah. Beautiful day, very busy. The tour continues.
Festivali, History Festival. Bring friends for
Yo, so second day here in Belgrade. I'm off to the Nikola Tesla Museum. A great man that really is underappreciated in the history books. He was born in Belgrade. He eventually emigrated to the United States, and he was far more responsible for the electricity that we know today. I think he discovered the AC grid, whereas Thomas Edison is basically given all the credit for things like the light bulb. But the reality is Thomas Edison didn't discover the light bulb, he just patented the light bulb, whereas Tesla was a true inventor. So I'm interested to learn a little bit more to expand my knowledge on the guy. I have watched a lot of documentaries on Tesla. Read a few books of his. Read a few books that were written about him actually. Looking forward to sort of maybe seeing if they got anything about the death ray, seeing if they get anything about the sort of free energy that he basically supposedly discovered, and the Tesla coil, of course, which is very famous for. So let's go have a look.
One, two, three. 1, 2, 3. Hey, cute. Hope you enjoyed it. We're Jedi's. use for it. He used it for private presentations. He often organized mostly for investors. People want it also in Europe at 220 volts. And the voltage of the current has increased on this primary coil from 220 to 500 volts. The current that is passing through all these wires creates a magnetic field that passes through the air, energizing the secondary coil, where you gain 500,000 volts or 500 kilovolts. Once again, the current passes through the wires, eventually exits at the top, where you will see an electrical discharge or a lightning. This, of course, is the easiest way. On 3, behind the fence, light bulbs, behind the fence, with behind. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. So as I promised,
That was the Nikola Tesla Museum. Pretty insightful actually, although a little smaller than I was hoping it to be. It was effectively just, well, it wasn't that big actually. However, it was interesting to see the inventions that he patented, and it was amazing to see the Tesla coil in action. I'd seen it on television many times, read about it in books, but I'd never actually witnessed it in action and actually harnessed the electricity. I think there's one in the Science Museum in London, so I could be wrong. Maybe I experienced it when I was a kid, but I need my memory jogged. But yeah, that was enjoyable. 4 out of 5.
I have one photo of this.
I could be wrong, but there definitely does seem to be less destruction here from the last time I was in Belgrade. It was very noticeable, the amount of bullet holes and bomb sites when I was last here. This may or may not be one. I think it is one, but at the same time someone could be bulldozing a building. But it's very plausible this building, given its age, was bombed by the Americans and the Brits during the Yugoslavian war, basically sort of drawing an end to that war. Yeah, this city, compared to obviously Sarajevo, it has a lot more wealth in it. It's good to see the Serbians are sort of back on their feet. Everyone seems happy. Everyone seems alive. It's all good here.
Mi smo spremali loš band, loš sastav, loš ćemo kad god poželite.
So this is really random. I was in the center of Belgrade and I was like, where the fuck is everyone? They go, oh, you're at the beer festival. Well, the beer festival's massive. It's bigger than anything you see at Hyde Park. Asian Dub Foundation are on next.
Srećan nam mir.
Hvala Belgrade od neba, brate.
Check 1, 2. Double in your area right about now, bring your positive vibrations. It's all an energy exchange. This one's called Zigzag Nation.
Yo, so last night's beer festival was pretty good. Sadly, I'm now worse for the weather. I've just walked to the sort of east side of Belgrade, where there's this church that sort of stands out on the map. So I thought I'd go check it out. A little bit of a long walk uphill. Belgrade's a lot of hills actually. Be prepared to sort of get your steps in when walking around Belgrade. There's certainly a lot of steep hills to climb. It's certainly good for the calves, it's certainly good for the heart. Highly recommend it because it certainly compensates for the amount of beer that they serve up at these beer festivals. Looks like I found the church just over here, so we'll go have a closer look at it. A statue of a man, I don't know who this is, have to be said. I've looked on TripAdvisor, he's not listed on TripAdvisor. However, you can bet leftists, when they get hold of Belgrade at some stage in the future, they will want to tear this man down. Because look, he's carrying a sword, he must have oppressed people. Unbelievable. Okay, just waiting for the wind to stop and the fountains to stop. It seems to have done me a favour. Right behind me is the Church of Saint Salva, as you can see. Temple of Saint Salva. This church or temple can accommodate up to 10,000 people inside. Well, let's go have a look. So what did I learn about this cathedral? It's actually the largest Orthodox church / cathedral in the Balkans. It's Serbian Orthodox, which is of and named after the saint Salva. He existed around, when did he exist? 1175 to 1236. Just cheating. Just read that. During the Ottoman Empire, some 400 years later, his remains and possessions were basically burnt at this place where the church now stands with this huge dome. So plans were sort of conceived to build this church many years ago. However, the plans weren't plans weren't finished until the 19th century. Work was then attempted to begin in 1935, but due to the advent of war, nothing actually happened. So then in the mid-80s, the church then began to be built. The church dome was finished in 1989. And as you can see from inside, the church is still under construction. I imagine it's going to be very, very beautiful when it's done. Every single contribution in that church, I'm sure every time you put your money in, pays for the labour of that church. It's kind of that's how religion works. You pay your money, they build churches. You pay your money thinking that you're going to get a ticket into heaven, and you're going to get a blessing, and your sins will be removed, and your family will get better, and you will get better just by paying money. It's as simple as that. It's a genius idea, really, isn't it? However, it's a nice church. It has to be said. It's definitely a nice church, and when it is finished, I imagine it's going to be a very glorious place to visit. It doesn't seem like 2017 is the time to come to Belgrade. The National War Museum was closed. The museum in the fort was closed. This isn't complete. I imagine 2018, 2020, great time to visit Belgrade. But be sure to visit, because there's a lot to see and do. 3 days would be ideal. One thing I did observe inside the church was, this must be a thing about the Orthodox religions. Everyone was kissing every single painting, picture of Jesus Christ or Mary or some saints. They were kissing every single picture. I mean, syphilis must be rife inside the Orthodox Church. I mean, why would you kiss a painting that's just been kissed by 100 people before you in the last 10 minutes? It just seems insane. But this is people's religion, I guess. Religion never was for the same. Hello. Look at that. There was a few other people doing that earlier. What I find really nice about Eastern Europe, there's fountains everywhere. And when I say fountains, I don't mean fountains that recycle the water over and over again. So you're basically just, it's not even safe to touch. Fountains in Eastern Europe use fresh water. So it basically means you can drink from these fountains, which is really nice, I think. I mean, I could be wrong, and people are just nuts, but everyone seems to be drinking from these. I think they wouldn't if it wasn't safe. But you see this all over Eastern Europe, and especially the Balkans, and when it's the sort of high 30s, it's really nice. Another statue leftists will want to pull down at some stage in history. Make note, last time you will ever see it. Obviously, walking around Belgrade, I've noticed a lot of streets like this. Not quite finished. I think there's a lot of investment going into Belgrade. I think it's going to be one of these places that looks amazing in a few years, but it's not quite there yet. And unfortunately, it doesn't really have the sort of monumental historical streets that it could sort of rely on just to compensate in the meantime. It has a few, but it doesn't have as many as some cities do. So I think when they've finished places like this, made the place a little bit more pretty and more accessible for tourists, I think it'll be a great place to visit. Just not quite yet. Yo, so I've reached the end of my journey in Belgrade. Thank you for joining me. Hopefully it's given you some insight into what Belgrade has to offer. As you can see, the station is pretty basic. I think it's an open air station. They call that a roof. Not much of a roof. It's all very primitive, but you know, this place is under construction. If you look around over here, you see some sky rises going up. There's a lot of construction going on in Belgrade. It proves there's a little bit of money flowing into the economy. There's certainly a lot of investment going on, but it just simply doesn't seem ready for tourists at the moment. A lot of museums were closed. A lot of things weren't, you know, working as they should be working. But at the same time, it also so it turns out my battery died, so hence taking off where we left off. If you do visit Belgrade, it is a vibrant place to visit. The people are a little bit colder than some places I've been, but I think it's just a question of breaking the ice. There's obviously a little bit of built-up tension from the ridiculousness of the Americans and the Brits dropping bombs all over Belgrade 20 years ago. But don't let that put you off. The people are kind, the people are good, just like anywhere else in the world. And there's things to see. I recommend coming for 3 days. The next trip is Montenegro. If you fancy watching that video, click subscribe, and as soon as it gets posted, you'll get alerted to that video. I have no idea what awaits because it's the first time I've been to Montenegro. I'm looking forward to visiting. Until next time. Cheers. This is my train for the next 12 hours. This is Serbian version of Eurotunnel, I guess.